Hi, I'm Kimberly Corp.
And I'm Catherine Corp.
And we're the owners of Pilates on Fifth here in Manhattan and the creators of Pilates on Fifth online. We're here today to talk to you about the do's and don'ts of stretching your quadricep muscles and your hip flexors. They get very tight on everybody, but we see most people doing the stretches not in the most optimal of ways.
Correct.
So Catherine's going to turn and face that way, and she's going to grab her left ankle, and she's going to do what everybody usually does. So just right. So that is not good. Now, here's why. Can you balance while I tell everybody what you're doing wrong? So first of all, the knees are not aligned. So then you're not really going to get the stretch of the rectus femoris for sure. You might actually stretch the vasti, but you would stretch them more if this were in line. So the first thing she wants to do is get her knees aligned. Now, secondly, she's not looking forward. So look straight forward and pull the shoulders back. Now, if your client, hold on to me, most people need to hold on to do this, and that's perfectly acceptable. So in a way, she should think of tucking her tail under.
And that's the magic piece. If you notice, I was still
slightly,
That's not going to get the front part of
So most people, right, who have tight hip flexors are a little bit pitched forward. Even if they're posteriorly tilted, if the hip flexors are tight and they go into this stretch, you'll find that something weird happens there. So most people should be holding on, and I'm just doing this so we can prove that most people. And then what I like to say to clients is, even though we normally don't ever cue someone to deliberately go into a posterior tilt, in this case, it'd be like I am trying to pull her pubic bone forward, push her hip bones back, the knee back, so that everything's in one line. Now, switch legs so that we can, and turn to the front. Oh, okay. What were you going to say?
You can even bend the standing leg slightly if it makes it a little bit easier to get into a posterior tilt.
Absolutely, that's very important. Like if it really, right now we're focusing on the leg that's up, so if the standing leg has to bend to make sure the pelvis stays neutral, then that's what you should do. Now the other thing, send your leg out to the side. So this is I'll get where you can actually see it. This is probably the most common thing we see is people grab and stretch and they've got their leg way out here. Now, if you need to hold on to me because we're going to keep her here forever, bring your knees together, and don't you feel that so much more in the TFL and IT band?
Yes.
And it's pretty remarkable how much. And so when we have our clients say, they're like, oh, I'm stretching. I'm like, yeah, bring those knees together. All of a sudden they're like, ah.
Now, if someone can't get their knees together without a lot of pain in the knee, it could be that their IT band is so tight that that's not possible.
So then you work where it's just before that threshold where they're dying, and meaning that, we've all had days where you're like, ooh, that hurts. Well, don't go to the point where you're like, I can't bear it. Go to the point right before, and it can slowly loosen up.
But also remember that if you're just stretching like this, you're only getting the hip flexors that cross the hip joint. So you're missing the rectus femoris, which crosses both the joints. You have to bend the knee as well. So if you're so tight that you can't grab the ankle and back, then maybe you need to go into a lunge and bend here, but you have to get the knee bent so you create length on both ends.
But now that you're in that position, this is another good place to talk about this. So see how we have a mirror so I can see that she's doing this right. Her shoulder and her knee are in line. What most people do is stick your leg way out in back of you, and they lean forward.
And then they go into
an arch back. So that actually, you don't feel your hip flexors as much right now. But now bring your knee right under your hip bone, and stay upright. So now the spine is straight. So we've got nice, the neutral spine, neutral pelvis, and her knee is reaching down. And what you can do from here is start to think of curling over, since the psoas attaches to L1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is a really nice, gentle way to get a nice hip flexor stretch. And it feels really good. It doesn't put strain on things. It doesn't put strain on the supporting knee. Because what happens is some people are so avid about stretching that back leg that heaven knows what's happening over here. So that is a nice, simple way. What helps for a lot of people is to think of tucking the pelvis so that you get that nice opening of the hip flexors there.
Just as she said, think of tucking the pelvis. We're not actually asking you to be here, but it's so easy to have your little derriere sticking out in back that you want your sit bones ending to the ground. So if you need to think of a tuck to get your sit bones from here to here, then you need to do that.
Okay, so now kneel for us and put your one leg forward, put your right leg forward, So here's what you have to be careful with in this one, because this one can be good and it can be very bad.
Right.
So we're not saying it's bad, we're just saying it needs to be monitored. So if she lunges forward onto that right leg, it is your right leg, and grabs her left ankle. Now, right now the way Catherine's doing it is she is forward of her kneecap. If she were, I don't know if you can see that, but when you do this, you want to make sure that the weight is not going directly into the kneecap in a way that could compromise the knee joint. There's a way to do this where your weight kind of stays forward of the kneecap, and that's what you would want to do. If you're feeling pain, I'm going to have to sneak out of the frame for a second. You can always put, and which one are you going to do? Pads under the knee, So, and make sure you're forward of that kneecap, and make sure then that there's no undue pressure on the knee, because obviously you don't want to try to fix a problem and in the meantime cause another one.
Right.
That sort of is not anyone's goal ever.
Right.
And that can be very nice as well. Obviously, there are many more quad stretches the more flexible you are, but we find that even the most flexible people sometimes need to go back to the most simple ones to target the origin and insertion of muscles instead of just the belly.
And one more thing about this position. Be mindful that you're trying to keep your torso as vertical as possible. I'm going to do this next one wrong, or try to do it really wrong. I'm going to hold on so I can go into it. Don't sink this way.
Right.
If you sink too much, then you might be missing the quad, and you might be stretching the anterior capsule of the hip, and you're just going to get flexibility where you already have it.
Right.
So it's better off to try to get your torso a little bit more vertical, so that way the anterior capsule of the hip gravity's not helping it go straight to the floor. You're a little bit more lengthened, and think of moving forward as opposed to down.
Right. It's very, the quads are tricky. And again, you have 4 quadricep muscles and only one of them crosses the hip and the knee. What Catherine was just doing here, oh no, you're fine, crosses, is the rectus femoris, crosses the hip and the knee. But to get the vasti, as we did earlier, you keep this nice and neutral, and you keep the knees together and you don't let it wander out to the side. And then you're getting the 3 vasti at the knee joint, because you want to make sure you target those as well. And I think that pretty much covers
it.
Now, oh, one other thing. Ballerinas do this crazy one where you're like pulling up that way. If you can do that, great. Just be careful of all the other joints involved in that. The lower back takes a real big old kick when you do it that way, as does the shoulder. So just be careful if you're one of those super ooey gooey people who can do things, of what you're sacrificing to accomplish a certain goal, and be very careful.
Exactly.
Thank you.